guys, we are back with Messy on Purpose, and I have Mitchell here with me today. He's going to tell us a little bit about himself, and then we're going to dive into some fun conversation.
Oh, you bet. Thanks, Felicia. Thanks so much for having me. Appreciate that. Let me let me give you sort of an overview of what other people think is important, and then we'll talk about what really is important. So I live in Silicon Valley. Been here for 39 years. Happily married for 37. Have a 27-year-old son who is absolutely spectacular, as is my wife. I've started 20-ish companies. I've sat on the board of a NASDAQ firm. I have written 65 books. One of my companies is a book publishing company. We have published over 750 books. What really makes me today started back in 2019. And that was when I went on a path to interview 500 thought leaders on credibility. So I have an updated version and definition of credibility, and that led me through a number of different ways. And I'll leave with, during that time frame, I unlocked a very interesting superpower. And so my superpower is to sit with any human or any company and help them articulate in less than 10 words, 3 to 9 words, where they are executing on their purpose. And when you get to execute on your purpose and define it in such a short period of time, you can, by definition, be messy on purpose because you're always getting to the place where you need to be.
And so when you're helping people find that purpose, where do they usually start? Like, do they have kind of an idea of what that is, or how do you help them find it?
So let me say my words again because it's slightly different. We all have this concept of what the word purpose means. And if you ask 100 people what the definition of the word purpose means, you'll get 100 different definitions. There's in the literature and in practice, there's a framework called purpose-driven companies. And even the way a purpose-driven company, other than incorporating God into the company itself, the way that's deployed in every company is different as well. So what I do is I help people articulate where they're executing on their purpose. And there's a nuance there. And I'll give you a good example, and then I'll come back to your direct question. Your direct question is where do they start? I got you. So when I was publishing books, a lot of times I would bump into somebody who was a first-time author. I would say if you look at the numbers, 80% of people want to write a book. When it gets to the final end, even as easy it is these days, only 6% of people actually write the book and get it published. And so what happens is they want to write the great American novel with that perfect book. And what I would do as a publisher is I'd look them in the eyes and I go, listen, you got something really of value. What is a book you would write that will bring you more business tomorrow, either speaking, coaching, consulting? And I say, let's call that your second book. Let's do your second book first. You could always come back to the first one because, we'll get that second one out there. It'll be the throwaway book. And most cases, people don't come back to the second one or come back to the first one. The concept of defining purpose is so grand that it's really hard for people to do. So what I can say is, hey, let's figure out where you're executing on your purpose today, which means you could change where you're executing on your purpose tomorrow. Now, where do most people come from, to answer your question? When I did the research, 98% of every person I spoke with does not understand with clarity where they're executing on their purpose. 98%. Now, if you ask them a question, do you know your purpose? Do you know where you're executing your purpose? They'll give you an answer. But 98% of people cannot articulate it in 3 to 9 words. And so where do they start? The short answer is they start with and now for those who are just listening and not watching, they start with some marketing cookie cutter. So I got my double fingers up. They start with some marketing cookie cutter approach of what they think the world has taught them their purpose should be. That's typically where people start.
When you're talking about purpose, are you referring to like kind of the same thing as like finding their why? Or are those two different things in your opinion?
Well, it depends on Now, when you say finding your why, I often think about Simon Sinek, who says we need to find our why first. By the way, one finds their why second. So Simon got that piece of the equation wrong. But finding your why is important. But tell me, so I can answer your question, what do you mean by the question, finding your why? What does that mean to you? So I
I'm
can
referring to Simon Sinek's why. You hear it a lot, right? And I've heard it in different scenarios, different jobs, different things that, you pursue. People are like, you have to find your why to have the motivation behind, what pushes you and, gets you there. So, I mean, for example, I did insurance for a while. When I was going through the training for insurance, that was one of the practices they do. So, like a corporate kind of environment does a little bit more of like kind of those practices, the finding your why thing. Actually, that's when I read not the insurance. It was a different corporate job, but it was that's when I read. I was actually doing a leadership. I was building a leadership program, and that was one of the books that we covered at the time. And that was a big thing that they set on. And I feel like you get that a lot in the corporate world with the finding your why, based
got
off
it.
of Simon Sinek's book. So I'm wondering how that differs from what you're referring to as purpose.
So to some extent, there's absolutely overlaps. And not only is there overlaps, if it's done right, it's the same, but it's often not the why first. So let me step back and I'll share with you. I'm going to share on the screen the 10 values of credibility that came out of. And if you just Googled, went to AI and say, hey, what's Mitchell Levy's 10 values of credibility? Credibility is the quality in which you're trusted, known, and liked. And when you're looking at those values, one of the things that's most important is being a servant leader. So if you're a servant leader, if you're a service to others, and you have the intent and commitment to do the right thing, and you're trustworthy, and you're authentic in terms of what you do, and you share what you do with others, then the why in many cases, or the superpower that most people have today, turns out to be some problem that was vexing them when they were younger, right? So typically, your superpower of today is you had some kryptonite and you came over it, and then your why is to help other people come over it quicker. That's typically what why is. When I think about executing on one's purpose, I think about as a servant leader who is adding value to others. The concept is who. So instead of starting with why, I'm going to say start with who. Who are you a servant leader of? And from their perspective, what is either that pain point or pleasure point they are focusing on? And so essentially, what I'm going to say, if you start first with the who and the what, and your who and the what is also in congruence with your why, now you got something that's really powerful. Does that make sense?
Yeah, can you give a little bit of an example? So, kind of basing it off of you and what your why and your purpose is.
So the today, I have two different. What I do is I have a formula, and the formula is called the acronym is CPOP. It stands for your customer point of possibilities. So if you're a credible human, who's that customer base you serve, and either what is their pain or pleasure point they're articulating with. And I have two of these. One is part of what I do. In 2021, I was asked to join the Marshall Goldsmith 100 coaches, some of the best executive coaches on the planet. So I also do the coaching thing. And in my coaching environment, my CPOP, and so remember, it's the who and then the what. So it's fast growing CEOs living executive abundance. So fast growing CEOs living executive abundance. Now, when you share that, the proper next question, if somebody is either a referral partner or a prospect, is, well, what do you mean? In this case, what is executive abundance? And I could go back into that in a little bit. I'm actually in the midst of a dissertation program. Actually, I'm in the tail end of a dissertation program where I am studying this framework in the marketplace And it's also a capstone. So I'm doing a book, 2 chatbots, and 2 courses. So it's been a really amazing journey. And part of that journey was I needed to and wanted to have an opportunity. Typically, I work with fast-growing companies, so of CEOs of fast-growing companies, and when we execute on things or decide to execute on things, sometimes it happens immediately, and sometimes it takes a little while. So I wanted to have a playground, a petri dish, where I could do my experimentation on executive abundance in a much faster way. So I ended up buying a LinkedIn agency. And with the LinkedIn agency, I have a different CPOP. And that one's very interesting. All right, ready? So this one's that one. Business owners tired of slimy LinkedIn sales tactics. So think about your CPOP as that playground you play in, articulated in 3 to 9 words, where the person who then hears you speak about it in a credible way because you've already put parameters around it. I'll give you an example of one of my favorite is from a rabbi. And his CPOP is 3 words. It's really hard to come up with a 3-word CPOP. But his CPOP is people want more. Now, with his congregation, what that means is we've been taught one of the marketing cookie cutter approaches is that enough is never enough. We always want more. We always want more money. We want more this. We want more that. We want more cars. We want better cars. And a lot of times when you're working with somebody and they're really in a good spot, sometimes just acknowledging or having them acknowledge they're in a good spot changes everything. And so for him and his congregation, kind of what he's doing is saying, hey, maybe you do have enough. I mean, assuming you do, right? And so depending on the person I'm interacting with and engaging, there's a number of different CPOPs. And the perfect world, for instance, for you would be a CPOP that is appropriate at work, but also appropriate for the side hustles you're doing as well.
Okay. So I still didn't quite capture the difference between your why and your purpose, though.
Thank you. So, where one is executing on their purpose, for me, it's with fast-growing CEOs who want executive abundance. Or it's with business owners wanting to use LinkedIn more effectively, avoiding slimy tactics. Or for the rabbi, it's people want more. The purpose on each of those, as opposed to the why would a rabbi become a rabbi? I can't answer for him. Why am I doing what I'm doing? My why stems back to the fact that I can actually see chaos. And when I see chaos, I can put a parameter around it. I can put a framework around it. So my entire life, I've been creating frameworks. And both of the places I play, whether it's LinkedIn or with fast-growing companies, I've seen a framework that would make it so much easier for people to interact on LinkedIn and do what they need to do, which is build relationships. Or for companies, the biggest problem with companies today is the fact that if their goal is structured around making the investors happy, they are satisfying one stakeholder group while they're ignoring 4 others. And so the entire ecosystem is not benefiting. So my why stems from I've seen a better way in which people can do things, in this case, both LinkedIn and in corporations. And my why is I see the answer, so I want to share it. And so my why stems back from the fact that I see patterns. I put frameworks around them, I want to execute on them, and I want to educate others to do it themselves in a credible way. And so the why often will help you understand where you either should execute on your purpose, or if you're executing on your purpose, you then need to step back and say, why am I doing this? And there's this interesting ground. I don't know if I have enough examples to be able to for people who came in, here's my why. How do I determine my CPOP? Many people don't walk in the door that way. And so that'd be a great question to experiment with.
So I'm leaving you with that question, and we're gonna have to circle back some other time when you got.
I would love that. Next time, you've got me thinking. The next time somebody says, "Hey, I just read Simon's book. I know my why." I always ask them, but I don't actually keep track of their why in relation to where they're executing on their purpose. So I'll now, you've now meant you made me think about something else I need to keep track of, so I can do a better job answering that question next time. Thank you.
A nice little research project for you.
Yeah, yeah. After I defend my dissertation, by the way, just to be clear, it has to be, I get to defend on April 7th. So after I defend my dissertation.
What does that mean?
So dissertations are interesting. Some people take, I think the max you could take is 7 years. Some people take that much time. The dissertation itself is all dissertations are 5 chapters. The first 3 talk about what's the research you want to do and what's the methodology and the approach, and the second 2 are the results and next steps. Now, my dissertation is not just research, but also a capstone. So what part of the dissertation is, you can see behind me, my book, Executive Abundance, is not on the marketplace yet. That'll come out after I'm officially finished with the program. After you're done with your research, after you've done all the work, after you've documented all your work, and have had conversations with your dissertation committee, they've approved chapters 1, 2, and 3, the research you're going to do. You then get together with them afterwards and you present, here are the results of what I found based on the dissertation I did. And that is officially called defending your dissertation. Now, in some academic institutions, the PhD doctor, professor who's never necessarily been in real life, they go out of their way to be difficult and sometimes fail their PhD candidates. Matter of fact, the PhD candidate one of them who is on my dissertation committee, she was failed 3 times before she went back the 4th time and got the okay. I'm not at that type of institution. I'm at an institution it's very similar to the why, but I'm going to say what the president of the university wants to make sure I do is that whatever I do for my dissertation, that's part of my life going forward. That the PhD is not just 3 letters, but rather is giving me the tools and capabilities to make what I do next even easier or simpler, much more straightforward. And so so on April 7th, I get in front of my dissertation committee and I get to defend, which essentially means, and this is when I took the course on how do you do a dissertation defense, there was one thing she said when she built the course that was the most powerful. And that is, when you first go in front of your dissertation committee and you're asking permission to do your research, you're getting people on your committee who are technically above you or superior to you, or who are smart in a number of different areas. At the time you go for your dissertation defense, you are typically, and this is what the course said, you are typically the smartest person in the world on that topic. So your job when you go into the dissertation defense is to educate your peers on what you've done and what you've learned. And that's a very interesting mindset change from going in thinking about, and I'll give you an example of how that might work. One of the friends I talked to who went to a traditional university, and he did his defense a year and a half ago. What happened is somebody who he really admired and he held up in higher esteem asked the question of, hey, given the research you did, was that the appropriate research methodology? Did you do it properly? Blah, blah, blah. And because he held that person in such high esteem, he was thinking to himself, oh, maybe I made a mistake, and he fumbled the answer. Whereas if he said to me, if he knew that his goal was to educate, his response would have been different. His response would, yeah, by the way, great question. Love what you asked. And this is why I chose this methodology and approach. And this is what we ended up doing with it. it allows, because you also do mindset coaching as well. When you have a different mindset of how you're looking at the world, it will allow you to answer questions differently. So April 7th, I get to technically educate. We'll see how that goes. My dissertation committee on what I did and what happened, and they, after I present for about 25 minutes, they then ask about 35 minutes of questions. Then I get thrown off into a room, and then they debate whether or not I've done enough work to be awarded the PhD.
Now, is this in relations to the research you did with like all the speakers, or is this something totally different?
It it's interesting because that research was incorporated into my study. So what I ended up doing is ending up understanding in the research I did in 2019 to 2020, which technically means I've only been in the dissertation program since 2023. That said, I've been focused on this topic since 2019 when I started doing the research. Because clarity and credibility are two of the four components associated with really allowing companies, it works for individuals too, but really allowing companies to execute on their purpose well.
With the research and everything, are you allowed to share anything, any insights, or does this need to be hush hush? Because I don't want to ask too many questions, and then
No, no,
you're
no.
like,
It's
ah.
fascinating. By the way, it's the perfect question because there are things you're supposed to share and things you're not supposed to share, right? So, for instance, I did create a book that you could see behind me called Executive Abundance. I did physically print copies, but on the inside it says private copy only, not for distribution, because it technically shouldn't be out in the public domain. Let me share, let's see, what are some of the highlights? Let me share three things, and you could stop me anytime, right? So we'll start with this concept of clarity and and the fact that I'm going to say I've done this now over 1,400 times. I could sit with any company or any human to help them articulate where they're executing their purpose in 3 to 9 words. Now, what happens for those who are do-it-yourself type people, they see a framework, they see a model, they know exactly what to do with it. For the do-it-yourselfers, and that's about 10% of the population, I have effectively changed their lives for the rest of their lives because they now see the simplicity of who they are and how they're showing up in the world. And they see how their why gets incorporated into where they're executing on their purpose. And they change where they're executing on their purpose as life changes, as their life circumstances change. But they are given the formula and they get to apply the formula to themselves. Now, I'm going to make it simple. There's another 10% of the population who wants to pay the money and have somebody else do it with them or do it for them. And that particular, the done for you people, that's not really my audience. And the messy on purpose part in the middle, the 80%, that's my audience. Because I want to work with somebody because there's going to be a lot of aha moments somewhere along the middle where they need to have things happen. So the first lesson I learned and have continually reinforced inside of companies is no matter who you are as a corporation, no matter who you are as a human, that 3 to 9 words can really put a nice parameter, and I'll put it in a fun way, can really give a great playground in which you play. Okay.
With the
Now,
people, sorry, just got a
no,
question
go
in
ahead. I was
between.
going to move on to number two. So good time for a
Yeah, yeah,
question.
yeah, yeah. So with the people who want you to do it for them, what are some of like the roadblocks you run into? Because how do you do that for somebody when you don't know what they want?
Oh, you
You know
can't,
what I
and I
mean?
don't. Yeah, no, I turn them down. I don't accept those clients.
Okay,
Yeah.
have you ever worked with somebody and then got to that point and then had to
Oh,
like end it, or had any issues, or like like roadblocks of some sort, and you're still trying to help them. Because I feel like when we start something, we're always working with everyone, right? We have to, like, no matter what you're doing, you have to work with all kinds of people to find out what your niche is and who you work best with and who you can help the best.
No, that's a great question, and I believe all of us have made multiple mistakes many times because that's just the way things are. So
That's how we learn.
it's absolutely how we learn. So in that scenario, I would do my best to turn the person who wants it done for them into a done with you person, right? So that'd be the first thing, and I would just do that subtly and quietly. And what I often do, here's the fun part. I know as an executive coach, I can't change anybody. There is nothing I could do that could change anyone, period. But I know what I can do. And this is where my why, my superpower comes in. I could give them a framework. And if I show them a framework and they interpret themselves within that framework, and they're going to then change themselves because they're going to see the world in a different way. That's what I do. Right.
And
So,
do you think some people kind of come with the like, I don't know, do it for me because they've never really even like they just can't get it out, right? They know what they want, but I think some people are like fixed minded and like don't think creatively enough on their own that sometimes if you give people the right outlet, they're able to be more creative with their thoughts.
it's quite possible that many people who we might actually call, so the opposite of credible is called dubious. And there are many people who show up dubious, not because they're dubious people, but because that's how they were taught. Right. And so sometimes it's if you free them up to think in a different way, whether that's creative thinking, whether that's no matter what it is, if you sometimes you just show them something different and they can think really differently. For many cases, what I find for those individuals, if they show up credibly, which means that they show up with vulnerability, they show up being coachable. That's probably the most important thing. When a board gives me a CEO and says, "Can you coach this person?" The first thing I need to do is speak to them. And what I'm going to be doing is testing whether or not they're coachable. And so I will find one thing they either are doing wrong or their company did wrong, and I will sort of somewhere in the conversation I'll bring that up to them, and how they respond will teach me everything. And if I cannot work with them, I will let them know then.
Do you
Basically, I'll
ever
say,
have somebody who's, you would basically label them as not coachable, but you tried to work with them to get them to a point where they are coachable? Because I feel like there are some people that maybe show up with the guard up and you can't coach them at first, but sometimes you can kind of slowly ease your way into it and kind of get them to open up a little bit.
I'm going to say yes to that. And so if my diagnosis up front was they're not coachable, that would have been a bad diagnosis on my part, right? Not coachable people are absolutely not coachable people, right? Or at least in today. Okay. There was somebody during the interviews who unbelievably smart, very, very capable. And when we were crafting that first CPOP, first of all, they weren't ready in the first session we had. So I said, "Hey, why don't you come back on the second session, and we'll spend a little bit more time. We'll focus on it first, and then we'll wrap it up." And so we did that. And what I said to him at the time, which was really fascinating, because he heard me and digested it, I said, "You're not ready. Because you've been taught all these marketing cookie cutter approaches, you're not ready for your true location of where you're executing on your purpose. But let's do the best we can with who you see yourself as today. And if it makes sense, come back to me when you want to." And to my surprise, 3 months later, he came back and said, "Hey, Mitchell, what do you charge for this?" And up until then, it was all on my dime. I spent 50K to run this experiment. Because what do you charge for this? And I charged him some nominal fee. I need to do it again. And 3 months later, he had a much different CPOP than the one we did originally. But that was him challenging himself to drop the marketing cookie cutter stuff. And it's, if I approached him 3 months later, it wouldn't have been the same as if he then said, I'm ready, let's try the next version.
When it comes to being coachable, I mean, that's one of the things, right? You have to be open to new ideas. And if you're not, I mean, it's you technically in the moment are not coachable, but it doesn't mean people can't change. And that example was proof of that, right? Like you can go home, you can, keep doing the things you're doing, think about them a little bit more now that you've seen some insight from somebody else. And then, oh, I see what's wrong with this. And then you can come back, and having that door open and offering that, like, basically my door's always here whenever you need it, really helps people have something to fall back on instead of just slamming the door in their face like, I'm done with you.
No, but here's what's fascinating. By the way, thank you for that. I'm going to go back to the first thing I said, if you don't mind. And happy to do the second and third, but we don't need to. Whatever works for you.
Oh, let's go through all three of them. I like this.
But I wanted to say one thing. Sorry, I did not turn the volume of my phone down. Okay, done now. So what's interesting, now I got to think about what was that point I was going to make. What's interesting is what I mentioned when I've given 1,400 CPOPs, 10% of people have changed their lives for the rest of their lives. The other 90%, they were super happy when they heard it. They're like, oh my God, that's really me. I mean, almost inevitably, I've got so many testimonials of, oh my God, that's amazing. And in 90% of the cases, that person forgets where they're executing on their purpose in 2 hours to 2 weeks. Because the world has so much chaos in it and so many other things are coming from, although they felt good when we spoke, they've never been taught how to take it. So 10% do-it-yourselfers, they're great. So for those who are clients of mine, I get to coach. For those where other coaches have sent people in, when they have a coach, done with you, someone by their side, doesn't have to be me, that keeps them in alignment with themselves, then it works. But you have to be coachable. You have to be ready, right? And the people who go in and they want an answer, and even when you give them the answer, they don't know what to do with it, they're going to forget the answer.
I think that a lot of people have trouble with that, right? When you know what you want, but you don't know how to get there. And those little steps along the way, if you don't know how to do it, it's hard to execute. And I think, I mean, you see it in all kinds of things. For example, anyone in like sales of some kind. So think of real estate agents. I mean, here in Las Vegas, everyone's a real estate agent. And but like only 10% actually really make, full-time income from it. And I think a lot of that is because you get in, you get certified, but now what? How do I generate these leads? What do I do? And if you don't know what to do on a daily basis, then you're just kind of sitting there. Nothing's happening. There's no action to be taken. So I think having that like kind of coach to kind of push you and kind of go to the right direction really does help.
Yeah, I'm with you. We could dive into so much more of that, but you said let's go to number 2. Let me go to number 2. All right.
All right, let's go to 2.
I'm going to share. So once again, if you're listening and not watching, because I'm going to share the 10 values again. What I want to point out when you look at the 10 values, that there's only one value that appears twice. And the truth is, when I first put it out there, I didn't know why. I'm just telling you the numbers made that happen. And so under being trusted, there's a value called integrity. And under being known, there's a value called integrity. And I knew that needed to be there twice. It really, literally wasn't until a year later that I figured it out. And now that I say it, Mitchell, that's so simple. How come you didn't think about it before? I don't know why I didn't think about it before, but let me tell you what it is. we have a external integrity, who we say to the world we are, and then we have an internal integrity, who we really are. Now, when there's incongruence between the external and internal integrity, that's when you see somebody and they feel slimy and you got to run, right? And it was so interesting that it really made sense for so many things in my life when I recognized that I could feel that energy in people. Like a classic example, there was in Silicon Valley, it's since gone away, this amazing speaker series. And so, 2,000 people into a beautiful auditorium, we'd hear a speaker speak. The speakers that got paid, 50 to 150,000 per night to speak. And some guy who apparently was raped when he was younger, lots of other things happened to him in life. And I was there, turns out my parents were there in the back of the room and the person I was with, and they all loved him. And I felt that his presentation fell on deaf ears for me. And what I recognized was he was now a professional speaker, not somebody who was relaying an experience. His words no longer meant anything to him. He was just telling stories. It wasn't from the heart anymore. It's just the words he was taught to tell because the audience reacted in a particular way. He no longer had his external, who he said he was and what the world said he was so much different than who he was internally because he didn't feel any of those feelings anymore.
Do you think it
And
was because it was like scripted, basically?
yeah,
Like it was almost like he was putting on a show every time.
he was putting on a show. It was no longer him sharing his story and telling his feelings. Yeah. Now, for many people, for whatever reason, this is something I can feel, right? There are people who, people who call themselves intuitive. You're intuitive if people are talking, but you're really feeling the energies that they're really sharing. And in that particular case, I'm like, yeah, I didn't like him at all. It just, he is no longer someone he's just telling a story and reading a script. He's no longer actually sharing his experiences from feeling them internally.
You can always read that. I mean, I personally see it all the time too. Like it's almost like, when you go, so I'm super into comedy. And so like when you go
Nice.
to a comedy show and you can tell a difference, like when something's been told, over and over and over again and it's scripted versus like when they're trying new things and like it's fresh and it's new, That's the same thing when people tell a scripted story. I mean, yes, it's still your story, but when you tell it in such a way that it's so scripted, people don't resonate it with it the same way.
And so, for those, if you want to be credible, you need to tell people who you are, and you need to be that person, right? One of the examples that I used in my dissertation, this will be so without uh, uh, meaning or words or people, was an executive at a company that left the company. Now, the reason they left the company was that their boss, who had super high integrity values in terms of running the company, when they were on a business trip together, their boss was down in the bar in a very intimate way with somebody that was not his wife. And the person I was working with, my client, just couldn't, that once there was incongruity between the values, and it wasn't even business values, right? It's just personal values. They were no longer able to see this person in the same way and have the same respect as they had in the past. And
I'd be
so,
the same exact way.
yeah, credibility is, so's my wife. Oh my goodness. Yeah. Credibility is not just values are read on paper. Credibility are values and actions that you live on a day-to-day basis.
Yep. And if you're cheating in one area of your life, most likely you're scammy in other areas. I'm just saying.
And, and most of the time that's true. But even if it's not true, it's hard for people to see. It's hard for them to tell the difference.
Well, we bleed through everything in life, right? Like not
Yes.
everything's perfectly balanced or, in their own areas. No matter how much we want to separate work and personal, it's
Oh,
all
it's
intertwined.
and that's probably the most important thing, or one of the most important things I learned is you got to be you. The same you that you show up with your family should be the person who shows up with your friends, should be the same person that shows up at work. And if you have to force yourself to wear a different hat, maybe you're doing the wrong thing.
Yeah, I mean, if you're embarrassed of yourself in one way, shape, or form, no matter where it is in life, I mean, maybe you need to look in the mirror.
Yes. Well said.
Unfortunately for everyone, I'm me everywhere I go. So,
Well, I don't know if that's fortunate or unfortunate. I would say, based on who I see and how you show up, I'd say that's very fortunate for those people who want to see the type of person who you are,
yeah,
right?
it's just unfortunate for the people that just don't take bluntness too well. But
Yeah, no. So I'm gonna say they don't deserve to be in your life.
oh no, and I am quite fine with that. So, as you get older and you start to work on yourself and you find that personal growth and really get to know things, you realize. So it's something that I didn't realize in my early 20s. Um, but like now that I'm 36, I've figured this out, and you figure out that you're not for everybody, and that's okay. Not everybody needs to like you, and you're not meant to be in the same circles. And I've realized that, if I'm not good for somebody, they're not good for me, and vice versa, for them. And like, it's not worth being forced to have relationships with people that you're not meant to have relationships with.
Agreed. Perfect.
Okay. Anything else on two, or should we head to three?
No, I think that's pretty. I think that's pretty good. Yeah, that's really good.
All right. What's three?
So let me give you a three, which was a significant aha moment for me that really helped me be the person I am today. And this happened a year and a half ago. And so what happened is I had done the research, so did the credibility research, and the book on the marketplace, did a TEDx that has 500,000 views. And, you know, I thought my TEDx is called We Are Losing Our Humanity, and I'm Tired of Watching It Happen. And I thought, I see the framework. If we do nothing more than be credible, we'll be more humane to each other. All I have to do is tell the world this, and life will change. Okay.
So you thought.
So I spent 3.5 years running a credibility business, and I made good money, but I didn't change the world. So I thought, oh, I need to create a clarity certification business. Hey, I'm good at clarity. Let's teach other people. Once again, made good money, and it was bringing us up to about a year and a half ago when a friend of mine helped me see the world in a different way. And what was interesting about the conversation is he helped me recognize the third thing I wanted to share with you. What he helped me recognize is the importance of, as someone who is interacting with others, is this one phrase. I've known it my whole life. I've only been practicing it a year and a half. Sell them what they want, deliver what they need. Sell them what they want, deliver what they need. And in within 24 hours of having that conversation with him, what I recognized is I had spent 5.5 years of my life focusing on what people need. People need clarity, and people need credibility. But most people think they already have some form of clarity or they already have credibility, and that's what they need. Now, if 98% of people don't have clarity, trust me, they don't have it. But what he said to me when we were talking, he goes, Mitchell, you are world class at clarity. I don't know anyone on the planet that's better than you. But you're world class at something that 98% of your audience doesn't have. And they don't have it because they either think they have it, they don't, or they don't think they need it. Either way, that number sucks. And he was not wrong. I was being messy in my business by simply spending 5.5 years selling people what they need. And so that's when when I was in the dissertation program, I decided I didn't want to do more research on credibility. I didn't want to do research on clarity. But when I realized that I needed something bigger, how to tie it all together, this concept called executive abundance. So what I'll say to you now is if you're a CEO of a fast growing company, you want executive abundance. That's what they want to do their job and do it even better and be able to bring a beautiful life to all the ecosystem they're working with. Or if you're a business owner playing on LinkedIn, you want to use LinkedIn to make better relationships so you get more referrals and more business. That's what you want. Now, what do you need? Well, you need clarity and credibility and a couple other C's that are part of my executive abundance framework. And it changed everything. So for those who are, this is really hard, by the way, to see. You need to ask other people. You ask questions like, well, based on what I'm doing, is that a want or a need? Right? And people have different definitions of that sort of thing. And what I'm going to say to you is, as long as you're a credible human, it is really okay to sell people what they want and then deliver what they need. If you're a dubious person, you're going to sell them what they want and then you're going to scam them. And so that's where my wife doesn't like it anytime I say sell them what they want, deliver what they need, because she's thinking about all the dubious people in the world. So I have to add that clarification. If you're a credible human, you have a servant leader attitude with the intent and commitment to do the right thing, you create the framework that people go, oh, wait, I really, really want that. And when they then start interacting with you, whether it's a book they read or courses they take or just the coaching you do, when they interact with you, then you say, okay, fundamentally, we need to do. For me, I always start with clarity. 3 to 9 words. Somebody says, Mitchell, look at my LinkedIn program, my LinkedIn profile. Do you like it? And the answer is, what do I like it? Who are you? And do I like it for what? Right? So, because what I need to see, we've published 750 books, right? And inevitably somebody sends me their manuscript and say, do you like it? And I go, like it for what? Right? Because in 2023, one thing happened, which is, I'm going off on a tangent. You bring me back, right? In 2023, something happened that changed everything. Once AI started entering the scene, thought leadership became ubiquitous. Anyone who wants to be a thought leader, or at least knowledgeable on a particular topic, just needs to be able to ask their favorite AI the right questions. So if thought leadership is ubiquitous, you're not going to win with thought leadership. Where you're going to win is by solid, credible delivery of what people want through the vehicle of what they really need. And so to me, what's really fascinating is being able to understand that difference. And the hardest part, and I'm really glad you asked, Fylisha, have you ever worked with somebody who's not a good client? And they're not a good client because they either are, one, they're a know-it-all. Technically, you shouldn't have taken them in the first place. Or two, they're just not good humans, but you thought you could, quote unquote, change them. For many people, even if you can't afford it, some of the best things they could do in their lives is fire the clients that don't work for them. Because it's waking up every day going, oh my God, I can't believe I have to face this person one more time. Same thing comes with the place you work. If you're super unhappy with where you work, it is time to either change what you do and how you show up. Could be a mindset change, or it could be it's time to change your employment.
I think some of the hardest things for people is they don't realize that they have more choices than they give themselves credit for.
Mm, well said. Yes.
That's one thing I talk about quite a bit is that like a lot more is in our hands than we even take responsibility for. And that's why I mentioned I don't like the victim mentality, because I don't think it's a choice to sit in that. And same thing
Ooh, right.
same thing with like the jobs, like that's a great topic right there. It's just like the amount of people who just sit miserable day in and day out, going to the job that they absolutely hate but won't find a new one because I really honestly don't know why. There's so many resources to be able to like apply for jobs and stuff at home when you get home from work or whatever. You could do, I know people that have done it at a job. But we just have so many choices and we just choose not to take them. And then we focus on the things that are out of our control, or we pretend like they're not in our control.
Mm, agreed. Yeah, I like that.
I think a little differently, but it
Well, I'm going to
usually
say
makes sense.
if this was my interview and my podcast, I would dive into where does that stem from. But that we'll do that another time.
Do you have your own podcast? Do I need to come on?
I do, and I will absolutely send an invite to you.
Let's do it. I'm all for it. I'm really good at talking.
We'll have a different one. So we'll probably unravel it or unravel it elsewhere. My podcast is interesting. I just thought I'd share it with folks. It's
Yeah.
called Leaders Living Their Values. And so that one's it's a half hour. And what I'm doing is I'm asking you the types of questions that you can actually show how you show up in life. Right? Because I want you to and I will only encourage people to join me if they have good values, which I that's why I had so many questions before we started, because I didn't get to see you as well as I wanted to. And but having this conversation, you're amazing, and so I'd love to be able to see and unravel those values on the air, and that's what we do, right? And very similar to you. No, the only scripted questions are who are you, same similar as you. At the second to last question is how do people reach you, and the last question is there a question I should have asked you that I didn't. So very similar structure that you have.
Nice. Yeah. Well, I'm more than happy to come on and have a conversation on the other side of things.
Nice.
Okay. So we've kind of went through your three. So what about diving into, there was something that you mentioned in the questionnaire for the guests, about the speakers and kind of what you've learned with the messy side of that. Can we dive into that a little bit to kind of round this out?
I'm going to say yes. However, can you remind me?
Um, So it was like the correlation between all of the speakers and the people that you've talked to and like their messy situations and kind
Mm,
of how impactful that was.
I don't remember exactly, so I'll make stuff up as I go along if that's
Oh,
okay.
that's fine. It doesn't have to be exact. It was
Yeah.
almost like a general statement. I just feel like it would be a good topic to kind of dive into.
I think we covered it, but I'm going to do it at a different angle.
Okay.
Okay. The and I think you covered it and you talked about it as well a little bit. So what happens is in many cases we show up in the way that we think we're supposed to, right? I'm double quoting it, right? And most I'm going to say most humans go through their life showing up the way they think they're supposed to and never actually show up as a true human. If you're listening to this right now and this is offensive to you, I'm really glad. Because I'm going to tell you Most humans don't act human. They act as a machine because they're following somebody else's marketing cookie cutter approach to life.
Can you explain what you mean by acting human?
If you wake up every day and you get to live credibly, which means that you're living within the values of your form of credibility and you're adding value to others. So you're a servant leader who are adding value to others. A good example in the caveman days, if you're the scout, you don't fall asleep at night. Otherwise, the saber-toothed tiger is going to come in and kill everybody, right? That's your job. Hey, you stay up. You're a night owl. You stay up all night, and you're the guard. That's a great way to live that people appreciate because they didn't get eaten at night, right? So many people think that the most important thing they need to do is find the magic that will bring more money or get their post viral or have their video go nuts. And, that's a vanity metric. The real metric is how many lives did you change? How many times have you impacted a person or an organization where a great example, if you think about a CEO that has, whether it's 10,000 employees or 300,000 employees, what I'm going to say to you is that every night at the dinner table, every employee is talking about you. Now, are they saying good things or are they bitching and moaning, right? And oftentimes what I'll say is the legacy of a leader is felt in the success of their stakeholders. And so a living human is not hoarding. We've been taught that if we know a secret, we're not supposed to tell anyone. That is a zero-sum game. We win we win when other people lose. That's what we've been taught. That is not living human. I mean, you could say that is, how about we do it? We add another word, living as a humane human. Thank you for that. Because I guess it is living human if you've been taught a scarcity mindset. Then you are still a human. You're just living a dubious human life. But if you want to live a humane, credible human life, you get satisfaction from the success that you're helping other people achieve. And most people don't really think about that. When they think about success, they think about, well, how much money did I make? Or how many clients did we satisfy? But not really clients. How many humans' lives have we changed that they've impacted all these? What's the ripple effect of what I've put into the world? And we just we're not taught to think about the bigger picture. And the path we're on, by the way, is not a really good path. I mean, here's what we've been taught. We've been taught, and if I jump a little bit too much into academic speak, make me talk human again, by the way. We've been taught that success is about making money. And that if we're running a company, success is that we, on a quarterly basis, we hit the financial numbers. And quarter over quarter, we do better, and the stock will do better, and the world will be better. Well, the world isn't necessarily better. But because of that approach, that was essentially taken from, Alfred Deming, who was the guy who helped bring time and motion studies to Japan after World War II, Peter Drucker, who brought purpose into corporations. What they talked about in a big picture level is what we're missing today, and that is the way the world's heading is, well, we want to optimize employee productivity. That's really the thing everyone focuses on. The more productive employee, the better the company will be. Well, the problem with AI and robotics is we can actually see a future where the most optimized employee productivity is no employees at all. Well, if you have no employees inside the company, guess what? The economy, which is based on people working, making money, and then spending that money, consumerism, that economy falls apart. So there's a there's a fine line here between where we could actually see the world going, and now the technology will allow us to see to move forward. If we continue to measure purely on making money, we're heading down a bad path. And so let's change the measurement. Let's change what's important. And that's really what I'm doing with executive abundance is allowing the executive to see the world from a different lens than just making money for the investors.
So one question I have, and then I'll stop it with my questions. But in the one
No, no,
question I
no.
had,
This is great. Thank you.
um, okay, so out of everything that you were talking about, what do you think about our like school system and how we are teaching people to be those workers that are basically getting replaced by
Ah,
technology?
oh. So I have a 27-year-old, and we taught him different than the school system teaches. A school system in the United States and probably around the world, based on what I know, but I don't know enough, so I'm not an expert in this area. But I will
I
say,
only know the US, so
yeah, the school system in the U.S. sucks because we're taught to correctly answer 19,447 tests, and there's a one answer right and one answer wrong, and we're not taught discernment. If you're a parent and you're listening to this, there's one thing that will change your child's life, and that is teach them discernment. Now, by the way, you may not like it because if you're teaching a child discernment, they should also be discerning about the rules and regulations you're putting on them. And that's allowable. So, but we're in a different world than we are today. But to allow a single source of data, whether it's a newspaper or a TV station, to look at a set of events and give you their opinion of that set of events and take those as fact, when in many cases they could be fiction. So to view the world with zero discernment will allow you to continue to propagate the not necessarily good ideas that some people have. And so the most important thing that we should be teaching our students is how to learn. Because now we have at our fingertips, we don't need a teacher anymore. The teacher is no longer the person with all the information. The teacher is the person who should be guiding the student to be able to digest the information coming to them through all the AI that's at our fingertips. And so it's if we could do that through discernment, life will change.
yeah, I think we, oh, I don't see the school systems changing. I think it's up to the parents.
And in the short term, things like that don't change so quickly. In the short term,
No.
that's the answer. But as a parent,
Ideally, it would be great if it did, but realistically, it's not happening in our lifetime.
I don't know. We'll see. Some form of catastrophe, typically stuff like that, it happens faster when there's a catastrophic event. But I'm not sure what that is. But for school system learning, but we'll see.
We'll see. I was just curious. I know I knew based on your answer kind of how it was going to be, but I wanted you to explain it.
Well, and clearly, the fact that you asked that question is important to you. You must be, it must be intimate to you in terms of you thinking about this.
Oh, I just think about like all of these things. So I went to college and did all of that stuff, and honestly, I regret spending money on it because it was a complete waste of time. It's literally you read, take a test, you learn nothing. I mean, there are some, don't get me wrong, there are some areas that you have to do it. Like if you're going to get a doctorate or something like that, yes, that's a little different. But like I have a communications bachelor. Who needed that? It's a joke. And the only reason I went and got my bachelor was because I was going to go to law school. And then I, worked for a lawyer and decided that that was not the path I wanted to take because it looked very miserable. And so
But
I just
by the
got a
way, just to be
bachelor's degree.
clear, you're communicating very effectively, so something worked.
Yeah. And actually, a lot of what I've learned to be able to communicate better happened after I got my degree in personal development and diving into psychology books. So,
I think I must have got lucky, because when I first went to my undergrad, uh, it was at the University of Miami in international finance and marketing. And although in high school I was a horrible student, I kind of woke up in college and I got good grades and it was so easy. I went to my guidance counselor and said, "What is the hardest degree I could take into business school?" And apparently, the industrial engineering school did a joint program with business, and they called it a Bachelor of Science in Stochastic and Deterministic Models of Operational Research. The fact that I could use all those syllables still makes me happy. And it's what taught me to think about modeling systems and people. And surprisingly, I've been using all that my entire life. By the way, there were, I think, three or four other people in that program in the business school of 3,000. There was three or four other people, and I learned so much. It was amazing, but I just got lucky. I mean, it just it was. I just thought, if I'm going to be in school, let's not make it so easy. If I'm going to dedicate my time to that, but that's luck and motivation to do a change.
and I mean, it all depends on where you're at and what you're thinking at the time, right? Like some people, like I was not in a place to make those types of decisions at the time. I just was trying to figure out what to do, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. And turns out I didn't need a degree to do what I'm doing. So, and I think a lot of it is we push kids straight to college before they even know who they are.
Mm. Yeah, I think we don't put enough value in the concept of trade schools for
No,
those
we
who
don't.
really for those who really want to try a trade, whatever that might be. We just don't give it enough value. But I don't know the answer, right? This would be a fun, this would be a fun, if I was part of some sort of board or advisory committee for, like, what does the world of education need to be? That would be, given that I like taking frameworks and turning it, or taking chaos, turning it into frameworks, that'd be a fun place to contribute. Everyone's listening, and that's you. I'm potentially open to be on your board.
Well, look at that. We might have a new project for you. Yeah, that was just a little side quest that we went on education. But so to kind of round everything out, I think we had a really good podcast, really diving into kind of almost, I mean, the psychology base of what everybody does, right? Whatever you're doing, and kind of what pushes you forward, and whether that's, depending on your basis of why or purpose or how they intertwine and all of that stuff, varies person to person. And I think it was really good. But to round it out, is there like a piece of advice or something you kind of want to leave?
I I want to say that it, given that you have a choice to live a life where you can have fun and add value today, I'm going to encourage you to take that choice. And having fun while you're making money is so much easier than we're taught. And it's essentially looking at that audience that you have some superpowers, some expertise that you could add value to, that really drives benefit for the audience you're serving and internal value for yourself. And to me, it starts with the simplicity of a CPOP, your customer pointed possibilities, and find a place you could play where you can actually have fun while you're making money. And the one of the things we're taught is we're supposed to get a job, not like our job, work for a company, make money, and then at some point in time, when you retire, you have enough money and health to do what you want to do. And I say, well, you could do that today if you're having fun today and you're making money today, and If your desire is to travel to Europe once a year, you travel to Europe once a year. If it's to, whatever it is that is really in your heart is something you can do. And maybe this is unlearning what you've been taught and focusing on adding value to others. So, to me, it really starts with thinking about, now you're going to say with your why, and I'm going to definitely spend some time thinking about why versus your CPOP. But I think the answer is determine where you're executing on your purpose today. And if what you're doing is not in alignment with who you are, well, then what can you do that's in alignment with you, with who you are? And if it's not possible at the job you have today, what side hustle can you do? Don't wait for tomorrow. What can you do today where you can execute a little bit on it and see what happens? And the step has to start with you, and it has to start as soon as you're ready. And if we're all lucky, it starts now.
I think it can still start now. Sometimes you just have to start with you and just figuring you out.
Better step. I like my approach, but I like yours better. So thank you.
I know there's some people that just aren't ready for like the next step. Some people got to figure out who they are first to even know what that next step is. So kind of speaking, you deal with more elite people, right? You're dealing with people that are already in a business and already moving forward. But I think we do have a good chunk of audience that still figuring themselves out, trying to get through the things that they need to do to figure out who they want to be, where they want to go, and kind of what's next.
Talk to the people who are in your life who you trust, know, and love. Ask them what they think.
It's a good place to start. Well, thank you so much for coming on Messy on Purpose. I do apologize that it took a few different reschedules to get this.
No, you were just living your brand. I appreciate that authenticity.
To the fullest. But I appreciate you coming on, kind of telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do, and kind of sharing some really good advice. And if people are interested in using you as a coach, where do they find you? Where can they find more information?
Probably the best place is at my website, and that is mitchelllevy.com. So it's mitchellevy.com. There we've got the programs, some free, some paid for, and you could also get access to my calendar. So if you wanted to book time on my calendar, just go to mitchellevy.com, and you could see what I'm working on and focus on today.
Awesome. And do you have any speaking engagements coming up?
Oh, there's always stuff. Yeah, there's always stuff. But there's a little bit less these days until I defend my dissertation.
Okay, so we're waiting on that.
That we are, I'm on 2 or 3 podcasts a week. I do some speaking at events, but all minor in relation to the April 7th date of defending the dissertation. And then I think I got a speaking gig in Europe, and then we'll figure out what happens then.
See how that goes, and then everything else will follow.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for coming on Messy on Purpose.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate you.
And until next time, guys. Bye.